Hello, my name is Michael Curran from Queen's University in Belfast, and I am a co-author on this paper with Joseph Glennon and John Spillane from the University of Limerick. The title of this paper is Nearly Zero Energy Buildings, or nZEB, and their effect on social housing in Ireland, a case study review. For more than a century, social housing has offered people a home that they need, and the foundations of social housing provision in Ireland can be traced back to the mid-1800s. Statistics from the Irish Council for Social Housing identify that social housing accounts for almost 10% of Irish homes. Also, 75% of these dwellings are procured and managed directly by local authorities, with the majority of funding derived from direct government grants. Social housing has been an important part in housing provision for many decades. However, in the future, there will be challenges in achieving deep cuts in carbon emissions from existing housing stock as part of a global effort to combat climate change. Climate change is predicted to have a negative effect on the world unless proper mitigation measures are implemented. To combat these issues, buildings in the European Union are now being designed and constructed to tighter building standards and codes. One key measure aimed at reducing energy consumption in buildings is the mandatory introduction of nearly zero energy buildings, or nZEB. An nZEB has a very high energy performance, and the nearly zero or very low amount of energy required should be covered to a significant extent by energy from renewable sources produced on site or nearby. An nZEB is estimated to use at least 2 to 3 times less energy compared to standard buildings. The Irish Green Building Council state that EU legislation requires all new buildings to be nZEB compliant by the 31st of December 2020 and buildings acquired by public bodies by the 31st of December 2018. However, current literature fails to acknowledge and highlight the integration of nZEB and social housing, particularly within an Irish context. Therefore, it is necessary to identify and evaluate the emergence of nZEB standards and regulations in Ireland and their cost effectiveness and compliance with social housing construction projects. Thus, the aim of this study is to evaluate if social housing in Ireland can comply with new nZEB standards without increasing the cost of construction. This study is part of a primary investigation which aims to contribute to both industry and academia. A mixed method is adopted, combining both qualitative and quantitative analysis, and this includes a literature review, 2 individual interviews, 1 focus group, and a questionnaire survey. Further details of the research method are included within the paper. The interviews and focus group commenced by gaining general background information about each participant and the relevant case study. This was followed by a discussion on nZEB and social housing in Ireland. 3 main types of social housing were discussed: standard houses with a heat pump, standard houses with solid fuel heating, and new houses built to nZEB standard. Findings from the interviews, focus group, and literature review were then combined to generate the questionnaire survey, and this was circulated out to industry. All the resultant data from each research method was amalgamated and thematically analysed, identifying key words, topics, and themes for discussion. The most prominent theme that emerged from both the individual interviews and focus group seminar was the costs and sourcing of various materials needed to comply with nZEB standards. Regarding materials, more attention is being paid to the energy related to the production of the materials used to create and maintain buildings. The paper itself highlights various materials, but for example, insulation. In a standard build, insulation costs approximately €1,800, whereas in an nZEB, insulation costs approximately €3,100, resulting in an extra €1,300 when building to an nZEB standard. Another example, triple glazed windows. In an nZEB, they cost approximately €8,500, whereas in double glazed windows in a standard build cost approximately €3,750, resulting in a massive difference of €4,750. Another prominent theme shared with interviewees was the superstructure. The interviewees stated potential savings can be made on the superstructure of a build when considering the necessity of a chimney. Colclough et al. In the literature support that extra costs are incurred on a standard dwelling compared to an nZEB dwelling with the addition of a chimney. Another theme was mechanical and electrical or M&E services. In this research, it was found that the costs in an nZEB building are considerably lower. For example, in an nZEB build, M&E services cost approximately €18,700, whereas in a traditional build, the costs are €20,400, resulting in an extra €1,700 extra overall. These findings support the research of Colclough and Williams, where M&E costs on social houses in Northern Ireland are considerably lower when building to passive house or PH standards. Another theme was subcontractors. The graduate engineer remarked that some of the current subcontractors lack the skills and knowledge needed to implement nZEB standards. This was supported by a project manager on one of the other schemes, who stated that training and educational programs will have to be introduced if subcontractors are to fully comply with the statutory requirements of nZEB guidelines. The fifth theme identified was internal plastering. In a standard build, plastering costs approximately €8,400, whereas in an nZEB, plastering costs €10,000, resulting in an extra €1,600. However, in the long term, this provides a better insulated wall. The sixth theme identified was preliminaries. Preliminaries on a social house with nZEB standard cost approximately €23,900 per unit, compared to approximately €22,300 for a traditional unit, resulting in the nZEB being €1,600 more expensive. The seventh and final theme identified was time. 80% of the questionnaire respondents agreed that building social housing to nZEB standard will increase both time and costs compared to traditional construction. Even though the price of an nZEB social house is more expensive in the short term at the construction stage, it has the potential to render financial savings in the long term due to the quality of the overall build and use of energy efficient methods and materials. The key contribution of this research identifies that new nZEB buildings have many advantages and disadvantages. Nevertheless, in the short term, they are more expensive to construct, but in the long term, have potential financial savings for new social housing construction projects in Ireland. The study encourages and supports continuous investigation into the role of nZEB and social housing in Ireland. Thank you for listening.